Tonight, Scotland in shutdown. Storm Eowyn brings hurricane-force winds, leaving more than 100,000 without power, transport at a virtual standstill and buildings damaged. Much of the country heeded warnings to stay home.
In the west, winds topped 80 miles an hour. Throughout the day, waves have battered the Ayrshire coastline here in Ardrossan.
Buildings damaged and road closures. The worst of the wind has passed, but there's plenty of cleaning up to do. We'll have the latest live from the east.
At airports, those hoping to fly have faced anxious waits and cancellations, and those already in the air have had bumpy landings.
Well, things are still pretty noisy out there and pretty wild as well. But the good news is Eowyn's slowly drifting away northwards and those winds will slowly ease down through this evening. But I'll see you again in a wee while with more details.
I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Scotland closed down today as Storm Eowyn roared around us with hurricane-force winds. Most people heeded the red alert and stayed at home as the storm wrought its worst. More than 100,000 homes are without power. Houses have been damaged by falling trees, roads have been blocked, and of course schools, shops and workplaces remained closed. Wind gusts of more than 100 miles per hour have been recorded. Tonight, we see some of the most dramatic images of the storm, and we have reporters across the country to tell us what's been happening. First, the story of the day from our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
Hurricane-force winds swept in from early this morning, with gusts reaching up to 100 miles per hour in some places. Few areas have been spared from the impact of this storm. As the conditions grew more challenging and dangerous, roads were blocked, trees were ripped from the ground, buildings damaged, and the risk of flying debris increased. A section of the roof was lifted off Helensburgh Leisure Centre. Meanwhile, in Bearsden, this garden shed was blown over and left in bits. Unable to make his usual deliveries, this dairy farmer in Ayrshire lost 75% of his business this morning and part of the roof of his milking parlour.
We just got to make sure we're keeping everything tied down as much as possible and staying out of the way if it doesn't stay down. When we opened the doors earlier on, one came out of my hands, it swung round and then hit a gate which flew off its hinges and all the cows got out, so they were running around the farm and they were quite upset because of the weather. Well, we've got the generator ready to go. We do have an emergency generator because we've got all the fridges and things we have to keep going. But yeah, it's been on and off all day, so it's been kind of stop and start and trying to work out where's best to go.
Tens of thousands of homes are without power. In Dargavel, Ryan and his partner Taylor, who is pregnant, have been told it could be tomorrow before they are reconnected.
There's not got a lot of supplies in, to be honest, but just like try to also get our phones in charge and other things and get heating. We've no any heating either, so no, I will probably just stay put in the area and just.
Supermarkets reopen from 6 p.m. as well, so hopefully we can try and get some food back in the house and stuff like that.
It will take a few days. I can't be absolute in terms of how many days, but what we are trying to do is get the information we need with regard to the network, understand the damage that we've got. That will allow us to predict how long we expect customers to be off supply, and we will update our systems so they get that information as quickly as we possibly can.
In scenes reminiscent of lockdown, normally busy city centres were deserted and schools were shut. Public transport was suspended, flights were grounded and trains cancelled as the damaging winds started to pick up.
Oh my God! We've seen significant challenge for our own staff, so I would say that this is very much severe, and the description was absolutely on the money. And our hope is that what we start to see over the coming hours is that easing back, which will allow us to consider what the recovery phase will look like across the country.
It will take some days to recover from this incident and to make sure that all of the damage that has been experienced can be repaired, and that will be early priorities, of course, to make sure that we restore power supplies to support individuals in their own households.
Some people did venture out before 10 a.m, hoping to reach their destination before the peak of the storm. These travellers in Edinburgh were desperate to reach the airport to avoid being stranded.
We have our flight to Spain at 5 p.m. and it hasn't been cancelled yet. So we hope that if it gets delayed instead of cancelled, and we're trying to get to the airport now in advance.
If we don't go there in time, we lose the money, the flight, everything. So we have to try.
We're trying to get home to Glasgow because we only came yesterday for the day and stayed overnight. And now we're stranded. We're going to go back and see if we can get back in the hotel.
But at the airport, planes, including this one, arriving into Edinburgh from Budapest, were struggling to land. Across the UK, 1 in 5 flights were cancelled, affecting around 150,000 passengers. On the roads, conditions continue to be extremely challenging. A large number of HGVs overturned in the high winds.
Unfortunately, we have seen some commercial travel on the roads, in particular around about high-sided vehicles, and we have seen too many of them on the roads, which has resulted in overturning.
As well as the emergency services, home carers have also still been out on the roads, unable to leave their most vulnerable clients without any support.
Essentially, we've cancelled 70% of services and we've got 30% that are really, really critical and at risk of death if you don't deliver the services. The local authorities are really dependent on you still getting your staff out. People are literally getting blown off their feet when they're getting out their car and trying to get into people's houses.
The full extent of the damage will not be known until after the storm passes. An amber warning remains in place tonight. Then the clean-up will begin. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Well, as you saw in Sharon's report, there have been challenging conditions. We knew it was coming, and although the red warning has expired in the past hour, it's not over yet. Well, Sean has been watching it develop, and Sean, this has been exceptional.
Yeah, it sure has, and I thought it'd be worth giving a bit of context. Where's it come from? Because that's a big question. Well, you have to look back off to the other side of the Atlantic in America, where, of course, there's extremely cold air. You might remember the inauguration was moved indoors, and they've had snow well south, into the deep south in America. Have a look at these videos here. Now, first of all, this one is from Florida, Panama City, and you can see snow there, palm trees. And in New Orleans, they had several feet of snow as well. But this is Texas, Houston in Texas. So we're talking way south. Just to give you an idea of this, this is as far south as places as Morocco and also Tunisia. So incredibly far south for snow. And for some people, it's the first snow they've ever experienced in their lifetime. Now, this cold air that's flooding its way down across America, colliding with warmer air in the Atlantic, and that develops a very powerful jet stream. It's like adding fuel to the jet stream, which then spins areas of low pressure in the Atlantic to give you a very vigorous looking Atlantic with lots of wind arrows. Hence why we are where we are today.
So how significant has Storm Eowyn been?
Oh, well, I mean, it's been a huge storm. I mean, of course, in Ireland, they had record wind gusts. They had gusts of wind on the west of Ireland early on today, 114 miles per hour. Drumulban, for us, 100 miles per hour. And that exceeds the previous record in Drumulban, South Lanarkshire, of just under that. On Boxing Day 1998, some of you might remember that storm, big storm. The other significant thing, another way of measuring the intensity of storm systems, is the pressure. 8:30 this morning in Tiree, the centre of the low, sitting right off the island, dropped the pressure there. If you've got a barometer at home, you'll have noticed the needle going backwards almost off the scale. 941 millibars, that's the lowest pressure we've recorded in Scotland since 1995, in January 1995. So it's the lowest pressure in January since January 1995. So incredible stuff, a big storm, and some more windy weather coming in later on the weekend, but hopefully nothing like this.
OK, well, we'll hear from you later in the programme, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you heard from Sean, the West Coast was the first to be hit by Storm Eowyn. Ollie Dickinson has spent the day there.
This is now officially an amber weather warning here in Ayrshire, but you only have to step outside to feel the full force of what is still a major storm. The Ayrshire coastline was one of the first places to be hit this morning. At first, the amber weather warning brought with it rain and winds, but once it went to a red warning, you really felt the storm's almighty power as it battered the Ayrshire coast. Waves regularly breached this seawall behind me, sending waves crashing onto the pathway behind me, and high winds have shook the hotels and houses that line the Ardrossan coastline, with chimneys and roof slates coming down and debris littering roads. And that was the picture for much of the day, as the red danger to life warning turned the sea into a churning mass of white-topped waves. Despite this, as we took shelter in a local hotel, we could see numerous cars and people risking their lives to come onto this walkway and even out onto the harbour wall to take videos and photos near where that swell was rising. Even now, as the warning turns to amber, the wind, as you can see, remains severe. The question now is what damage has been done. Checks are ongoing around the coastline to see what impact this storm has had, but it'll likely be first light tomorrow when the true extent is finally known. Ollie Dickinson, STV News, Ardrossan.
In the Lothians and Fife, emergency services were kept busy with numerous calls to fallen trees and damaged buildings. At one point, police urged people not to go outside and inspect the damage because of the risk of falling debris. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
Such was the force of the wind, it ripped off almost the entire roof of a house in Tranent, smashing to the ground and hitting a car.
Obviously, having the red weather warnings last night, it was quite scary. I mean, I didn't really take it as serious at first, but when I actually seen something like that myself, it actually kind of took me back, and I was a bit like, like this is a lot more serious than what people think.
Even as the red warning was coming into force, the A1 in East Lothian was already closed after a truck was blown over near Torness. In the capital, there were a number of fallen trees. Many of them were cleared away relatively quickly. This was Regent Road. Nearby, cladding and bricks came off a block of flats in Leith. And at Cardenden in Fife, a shed no match for the destructive power of the storm.
And Gordon is in South Queensferry for us now. So Gordon, what's the latest there?
Well, John, when I was here last night, I remarked on how calm it was. It's certainly not calm now. Although the worst of the winds have died down, we're near the river here, so it's still pretty blustery. As you saw, fallen trees, damaged buildings today. Remarkable, actually, how quickly they managed to clear some of the trees up. But in the last hour, we've heard Linlithgow High Street, just a few miles from here, is closed because of fallen debris. There are still roads in Fife closed because of fallen trees. Remarkably, the Queensferry crossing, which of course was designed to be wind resilient, has managed to stay open to cars while other bridges have had to close. But as the winds ease, the clean-up will begin. Some of that will have to happen in daylight tomorrow. Tonight feels like a night for staying in. John.
Gordon, thank you. It was a similar picture in Edinburgh, although life is now beginning to get back to normal. Lewis Mickey is there for us this evening. So Lewis, what's it looking like now?
Well, John, it's certainly not been your usual Friday in the capital, but equally there's been a not insignificant number of people just milling about all day. But it is still pretty windy here, but certainly the streets and the roads are beginning to get a bit busier. For the most part, for a lot of people today, if they wanted to get anywhere, they were going to have to do so on foot. Lothian buses said last night they wouldn't be operating during the red weather warning. They're just starting to get back on the road now. Edinburgh trams followed suit, and they won't be operational again until first thing tomorrow morning at the earliest. And as we look around here, the main concern, there have been some fallen trees, there's been some bins going walkabout, but the main concerns have been around, first of all, street furniture. Some of the traffic lights around here are barely hanging on, but also roofing and masonry falling from a height and into the street. But things are starting to get back to a bit of normality here now. Some of the shops are beginning to open, but for others, they're going to be waking up tomorrow morning and starting to think about the cost of repairing the damage from this storm.
Lewis in Edinburgh, thank you. Now to Glasgow, and Ewan Petrie is by the Clyde with the latest on the situation in the city.
Well, the wind has been building in strength here throughout the day, and you can see the damage that it's been causing. It's ripped panels off this bridge, just showing the sheer force of the storm as it swept through the central belt. Earlier this afternoon it was whipping up waves and spray off the river. That's still happening from time to time at the moment, although it does appear that the peak of this has now passed. This morning we were out and about in Glasgow city centre in what would have been rush hour, but there was an eerie emptiness about the place. Just a few people around, mostly trying to find a way to shelter before the worst of the weather arrived. So it has felt like most people have heeded the warnings and stayed at home. Those who have ventured out, though, have felt the full force of this storm. 2 lanes of the Kingston Bridge were closed after a lorry overturned there. The wind is still strong here, so after a day of destruction and disruption, it will be some time before recovery teams can get to work.
Ian Petrie there. There were problems at the airports too. Flights were cancelled and rerouted, and for much of the day, the airports were empty. Here's Tara Fitzpatrick.
Well, the check-in foyer here at Glasgow Airport has been fairly deserted throughout the day. There have been some hopeful passengers turning up in the off chance that their plane might take off, but they've been met with bad news. Around the UK and Ireland, 1 in 5 flights were cancelled today. By 1 p.m, there were over 1,000 flights grounded, wrecking the travel plans for over 150,000 passengers. And here in Glasgow, there's been some frustration among those that say they were told to turn up to the airport despite the likelihood that their flight would not be going ahead. Well, earlier today I caught up with some of them about how they've been impacted by the disruption.
We're going to Dublin for a party tomorrow and hopefully we can get there. Or there'll be a lot of disappointed people.
Got rescheduled for 3 and then it's getting rescheduled for 7 tonight, so hopefully I'll make it, don't know.
And now we are wondering how to just sort out the stuff, you know, and how to just get to Poland, because we've got appointments with dentists.
We ended up coming down last night and staying overnight rather than coming this morning because of the weather warning.
We were going to London and our first flight got cancelled, so we've moved to a later flight, but now that's been delayed.
We're kind of on there, but I'm not sure if I even want to go up in a plane in this weather today.
And for those that were able to catch flights earlier, it's not been easy. One flight this morning from London's Luton Airport landing in Aberdeen was unable to let passengers off the plane due to the high winds, leaving them stranded on the tarmac for over 2 hours. Another flight from Ryanair coming from the German airport of Wies into Edinburgh was unable to land at all and had to turn back south again towards Germany. Now, some of this disruption might ease as the evening continues, but it's likely that many of those here will be waiting for a long time to come.
Tara Fitzpatrick. To other stories now, and 39 people have been arrested following trouble as Rangers face Manchester United at Old Trafford. Police say 26 of these arrests were made in connection with disorder in the city's Great Ancoat Street. Thousands of Rangers fans made the trip to Manchester for last night's Europa League fixture. Celtic say their Scottish Premiership match against Dundee is in doubt after their stadium suffered damage in the storm. The club say a full assessment will be made tomorrow morning and supporters will be updated. Scotland's first ever visitor levy has been approved by councillors in Edinburgh. Visitors staying in the Scottish capital will have to pay a 5% fee per night. The levy is due to begin for stays taking place from the end of July next year. Now, there may be a generational storm around us, but that doesn't stop the football talk. Rahman has the sport.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith New Year Sale.
Good evening. Brendan Rodgers says Kyogo Furuhashi asked to leave Celtic several months ago as the striker nears a £10 million switch to Rennes. Rodgers expects Jota to arrive from the same French team imminently and hopes to have a stronger squad when the transfer window closes. Meanwhile, at Rangers, Philippe Clement says he has mixed emotions after his team left Old Trafford with no points following the spirited performance. During his 3.5 years at Celtic, Kyogo Furuhashi was idolised by supporters, and no wonder. The forward scored 85 goals in 165 appearances. He's now called time on his Parkhead career.
Kyogo has expressed an interest to leave a number of months back, and obviously then that expression becomes stronger, and then obviously it gets to this stage where he clearly really wants to leave. And then sadly we have to then do a deal.
18 months after leaving Celtic for Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia, Jota will rejoin Celtic in the next 24 hours.
I think that he'll come back with a real motivation. He's got undoubted quality, still got things he can prove to develop. He's still young.
Top 8, we need to do a big effort against Union, and we need luck with the other results to be in top 24. What was the ambition before starting? That we are very close, but not there yet.
Young guys who are coming in this kind of games, it's really good to see that we can manage that as well. It's disappointing that we have a lot of injuries and that we have to do that.
News from the capital clubs now, and Neil Critchley says it could be a busy last week of the transfer window for Hearts after adding his 4th new signing of the month to the squad. Meanwhile, Hibs boss David Gray says he hopes the next chief executive can help bring success to Easter Road after the departure of Ben Kensell. Jamie Borthwick reports.
Another new face, and Hearts aren't done yet. Sander Kartum has arrived at Tynecastle on a 6-figure transfer deal from SK Brann in Norway, with another 10 days of the transfer window still to go.
We're still looking, we're still searching. Obviously, our squad now, if you looked at the numbers, is slightly top-heavy in numbers, although some players have also departed in January. So there might be 1 or 2 exits, but that might mean that 1 or 2 might arrive as well, and it could be a busy last week of January. But we're really happy with the work that we've done.
Hearts look to continue their unbeaten start to 2025 when they take on Kilmarnock in Edinburgh tomorrow. Hibs set off for the Highlands at dawn to escape the worst of the storm ahead of their match against Ross County. And after Chief Executive Ben Kensell left his role this week, head coach David Gray has faith in those running the club to keep progressing.
The relationship I've got with the hierarchy already is excellent. The constant communication that's always there will continue to be there, and I'm sure that whoever is appointed to fill the role of Ben's, it'll be what the club deem the right one, and then it'll be up to myself and everyone else within the football club to make sure that that's a fluent relationship, that everybody moves in the same direction, because we all want the same thing from top to bottom. Everybody wants success. And I think, if I'm being honest, that the Gordon family truly deserve it for the amount of support they've put into it over the time they've been here.
Nicky Cadden returns to the Hibs squad following his broken nose. Jamie Borthwick, STV Sport.
And you can keep across our website, stv.tv/sport, to find out if there are any postponements this weekend. Let's finally give you some tennis news, and Novak Djokovic says it's too early to say if he'll continue his partnership with Andy Murray as his coach after the Serbian bowed out of the Australian Open. Djokovic retired injured after losing the first set of his semi-final against Alexander Zverev. Murray joined Djokovic's team in November on a short-term agreement until the end of this tournament.
I'll definitely have a chat with Andy and thank him for being here with me and see, give him my feedback, which is of course positive, and see how he feels, and we make the next step. We're just still, hot-headed and disappointed.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith New Year Sale.
And one final piece of news from the Australian Open. Scotland's Gordon Reid and doubles partner Alfie Hewitt won their 6th consecutive wheelchair doubles title. Well done then, John, that's it from me.
Good news to finish on, yep. Thank you. OK, we knew in detail what the weather has been. What's to come? Sean is back with the forecast.
Wet by the coast, with a high chance of sun and splashing. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, thankfully, it's going to be getting a little bit quieter out there as we go through this evening. Still pretty wild and noisy out there in a few spots just now, but those winds continue to ease down. But still, over the next couple of hours, I expect we will get winds still around 70 miles per hour, maybe in the most exposed parts, still a little bit more than that. There's that little pink scale for you. Winds gusting 50, 60, 70, even 80 miles per hour still in a few spots in the next couple of hours. But watch that. Pink colour starts to drift its way towards the north. So yes, those winds slowly easing down as we go through tonight, but we still have the amber weather warning out for this evening, and still the risk of some damage. Of course, even though the peak of the winds has now come, it wouldn't take much still to bring a little weak branch down off a tree, for example. So just bear that in mind over the next couple of hours. But as I say, the winds continuing to ease down. Now, along with the winds, we've got lots of blustery showers, especially across northwestern parts, falling as snow over higher ground as well. Have a look at these overnight temperatures. Actually going to be quite a cold night. As the storm system drifts away to the northeast, it's dragging in colder air, and there is a risk of a few icy patches in one or two spots as we go into tomorrow morning. Now tomorrow, a very showery start to the day, especially across Argyll and Bute, Stirlingshire, and also across the Highlands. Snow falling over higher ground as well, even some snow coming onto the hills across central parts as well. But luckily, later on in the morning, as those winds continue to ease down, look at that, single figures on those winds tomorrow afternoon. Much quieter in the afternoon. A lot of dry and bright weather once those showers clear away, but we will see a little bit of rain coming back into the far west by the end of the afternoon. Quite quiet again on Sunday, although it does turn a wee bit breezier in the southwest. Temperatures about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. So on that rather chilly feel to things still on Sunday. But thankfully, it does look as if the storm will be slowly easing down over the next few hours. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And that's it from us on the day that much of Scotland came to a standstill. We'll have more on the late news with Emma and updates across the weekend. For now, we'll leave you with images from today. Good night.